You're watching The Experience, Comic Culture and Sales. Streaming live daily to Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It is Christopher, a.k.a. the Bronze Age Nerd, and
Big B McFly, the comic guy.
And we're coming at you from the Best Coast. That's right. This is Best Coast Comics. We have a really important topic we're going to talk about tonight. That's going to be the meat of the show, something that goes to the very foundation of why we started doing this show. So I think that you guys are going to enjoy that topic, or at least hopefully learn something from it. But before we do that, I want to make sure that we say hi to everybody who's here early in the chat, so we can, say hi to everybody else who comes in later. We love that too, but we want to say hi to all the people that were here bright and early, including GT Geek Comic, who probably left this comment, I'm guessing, on all three channels. If you don't know, we're streaming over on Big B McFly's channel. We're streaming on my channel, Bronze Age Nerd, and we're streaming over on the EXP, which is a great network that I recommend going and following, subscribing. I also recommend going and subscribing over on Big B McFly's channel as well. I just want to give him a quick shout out too, because I found out he just got monetized, right?
I did. I had a video that went crazy.
No, that's awesome. He was sharing his progress with that. I am so excited for him. Talk about positivity. I know that's a milestone that a lot of people that do content creation here in the comic book space or YouTube in general really look forward to. So huge congratulations to you, Big B. That's really awesome. I'm super excited to see that.
Yeah, I'm stoked.
Nice. Preston can't stay long.
Cents today.
There you go. Yeah, now you'll start to see how those big YouTube dollars roll in, right? Preston can't stay long, but wanted to give the thumbs up. Preston, I love that you're here for that. Hopefully you'll catch us on the rewind, because I think you'll enjoy the topic tonight. And then Psycho Phil's here. We got Psycho Phil. What's up, Psycho Phil? Comic Trips says we're going live. We are going live. We are going live out west here, along with Comic Trips, who, by the way, had a show earlier today, the Weekly Spinner Rack. He did it looked like a great interview with the current Hulk artist that you definitely should go check out over on his Pros and Cons channel. Highly recommend checking that out. He does an awesome show over there. Every time I'm trying to make dinner or get things going here in the household, so I always have to watch on the rewind. But I try to get in there early and leave some comments for the algorithm, and I can't wait to watch the rest of it later. Christina Payne, hello, Christina. Thank you for being here. John's Comics with Kids is here. Hello. Richard Westfall, hi. How's it going? Oh, we got Trev, the shipping guru, here. That's awesome. Welcome to the show, Trev. Space Case Cards in the house. Love to see it. Ooh, well, I mean, maybe that's some maybe that'd be a stretch goal for Heroes for Heroes.
You just don't get to see behind the curtain when we're, in between. I like it.
I like it. Jay is holding it down behind the dials and the switches back there, and we appreciate that. Garth Wong, welcome. Let's see. Is there anybody else that I missed? Oh, hey, Derek. We got Derek here. Hello, Derek.
Hey, Derek.
Lyle. What's up, Lyle?
Lyle.
Hey, SideQuest.
And thanks, everybody, for the congratulations. I really appreciate it. I pay not to see that. Yeah, okay,
I mean, maybe that's what we do. We have one donation pile for not see it and one for see it and see who wins, right?
Right. We have two different access codes, right?
Speaking of that, the very first thing we're going to do on all of our shows leading up to Heroes for Heroes, which I briefly mentioned earlier, is we're going to talk about it, because it's the best way to get the word out is to keep talking about it. It's been a little quiet on the front for Heroes. We're still at the same $525 donation. I have lots of irons and fires. I have a couple artists that have signed up to donate original art. Until those pieces are finished and they're on their way, I don't want to say, just in case they, these are busy people, they have deadlines. I guarantee you that you're going to be excited about both of these once you get to learn about it. But we do have some art that's kind of being generated for the auction currently. Some donations have started to roll in. Next week, I'm probably going to take some more time to show off some of those pieces once I get them unboxed and I get some photos to put up on social media. For now, I'll say continue to spread the word about Heroes for Heroes. If you're not familiar, it's a fundraiser for Mission 22. Mission 22 is a charity organization based out of Oregon that was founded by veterans, run by veterans mostly. They have some non-veterans as well that work for them. And they also, their main point of their work is to help veterans' mental health and their immediate families as they deal with PTSD, stress, depression, anxiety, and the ultimate goal is to help prevent veterans from deciding to take their own lives, which is an unfortunate thing that does happen all too often. And that is the origin of their name too. So definitely consider supporting this. If you want to help with the actual Heroes for Heroes campaign, one thing you could go do right now is go follow at Heroes for Heroes, the number 4, Comics, Heroes for Heroes Comics on Instagram, where you're going to see a lot of posts and stuff that's generated for Heroes for Heroes. So we would really appreciate that if you would do that. Remember, we're basically in October now, so mid-November is when the auction's going to happen. So definitely wanted to remind you about that. And at the same time, there's another fundraiser that I think we would be remiss in not talking about here at the top of the show when we have you all paying attention. And that is another cause that's extremely important to us. This is the cause to keep Jen reading. Jen is, by the way, Bigby just did a video on this too. Do you want to talk about that video real fast, Bigby?
Yeah, I just did a short video. Really the emphasis at the beginning. I'm not putting my face in this. This video isn't about me. It was just talking about Jen and the struggle she's going through, and asking people to help, and reaching out anybody who is a creator, Instagram or YouTube, make a video. Long or short, however. I mean, Richard just did one on Instagram. Nice. Short one. Yeah, it was great. And
thanks, Richard.
That helps. So I mean, just getting people aware of what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, so speaking of that, John, and I know you supported our auction last year. I just want everybody to know that the link, which I will paste both links in the chat. I actually neglected doing that here. Let me do that real fast. This first one is for the Mission 22 fundraiser. That does go directly to Mission 22. It's not, we're an official charity fundraiser partnered with Mission 22. So that's actually through their website. It's just like a portal for our particular fundraiser. 100% of everything you donate does go to them. And then this one is for Jen. So this is her GoFundMe that we just pasted in there. And that's that link right there. It says Keep Jen Reading. It's a really easy one to follow there. So go check that one out too. For those not familiar, Jen is a content creator and comic book collector. She goes by Comics Will Break Your Heart, is how you'll find her, like on Instagram. Definitely go give her a follow. And she's been dealing with a struggle with cancer for over a year now. It has definitely been hard. Both Bigby and I have had the pleasure of speaking with her and meeting with her, and obviously both care deeply about this cause, and we hope you do too. She definitely needs the help right now. So if you're able to spare anything, please do.
We got to have a meal with her, actually, the first time I met you.
Yeah.
Have a meal with her. So
yeah. Yep, absolutely. We got to share some time there, and then also at the Frankenstein Comic Swap, which is another one coming up here pretty soon. Be great to see her, but I don't know if she's feeling up to it. Hopefully, I mean, fingers crossed.
It's a possibility. I've chatted with her about it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, if for no other reason, I mean, I always love seeing her. I hope to keep seeing her these things for years to come. But if for no other reason than to get a chance to maybe help, post some stuff about it again too, and kind of get awareness going some more would be great.
I promised her that I would buy her a Juliet's, whatever flavor her heart desired. So
really, that's all you really need. Hey, hello, still only 35 cents. So welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like, this is stuff that we were going to talk about regardless of what our topic was tonight. But it is still kind of, not really ironic, I guess, but it's just kind of goes hand in hand with what we're talking about. It's coincidental. Because
something like, I know we're trying to ramp up for Heroes. Like, I just inquired with my work about donating, and they donate to things that have to do with veterans. So if you guys inquire with your work, a lot of times they donate like businesses donate to charities for veterans. So hit them up. Maybe we can blow the lid off this thing.
Yeah. Well, and I guess I'll switch gears back to that real fast, because I've had some people ask recently, what are the ways you can help? And I'll just give this little quick speech about it, if you will.
Yeah.
My number one thing is I'm trying, because of the turnaround time with artists. If you know artists that are willing to donate art or are out there, and you're an artist maybe thinking about doing it, we want to talk to you now, because basically the shipping deadline should be by about Halloween. Honestly, sooner is better, but that's a safe enough time to get everything into hand so we can promote it and use it to help kind of generate buzz about the auction. The second thing is we need comic books, and we need people that are willing to donate like key comic books or cool little runs or signed items or slabs, that kind of stuff, celebrity memorabilia, those kinds of things. We definitely would love to have that as well. Mm-hmm. But on top of that, we need folks like you watching either now or on the Rewind, on any of the channels we're streaming on, to spread the word. And part of that would be like doing like what Bigby's talking about, maybe going out to businesses that, you either work for or are acquainted with and saying, hey, are you looking for a tax write-off or for a great donation? There's this awesome thing, it's something that's not going to get the same kind of press as probably a lot of other bigger charities. So maybe that's a good way to pitch it to them and say, hey, there's a really great cause we can support. And it's coming up, mention that it's coming up around Veterans Day. It's very timely in that sense. So maybe that would help.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So, sure. But yeah, so we do have some news to talk about. So I think we should kind of quickly hit the news, and then we can kind of get into our topic, right? Does that sound good to you, Big B?
Yeah, let's do it.
There's not a lot of big stuff. So let me paste this link in here. And this is kind of, honestly, this is something I thought was really cool. This is at bleedingcool.com, and this is about Transformers number 13 sold over 100,000 copies to comic stores. That's pretty cool. I mean, maybe it's kind of sad in a way, like depending on how you look at it, because it used to be that most comics would sell over 100,000 copies. But hey, and today I'll take this as a win in today's day and age. So I've been really enjoying this. I think I'm on issue like 7 or 8, I think.
He's seen better days.
Yeah, Starscream has definitely been shining in the part where I'm at, and I need to get caught up. But I just think it's cool that it's selling this well. And yeah, this all sets the stage for G.I. Joe 1, which is launching in November, for Joshua Williamson, Tom Riley, and Jordy Belair. I'm excited for G.I. Joe's official launch. I mean, we've had small titles that have been included in the Energon universe that feature G.I. Joe characters, but I think this is awesome. I'm excited to see this. And there's another comic. There's another comic that the sales numbers just came out. What was it? I want to say, I'm spacing, but I saw another big sales number, and I didn't have time to pull it for this show. But there was another comic that had some really impressive sales numbers.
All right.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, one of the things I've talked about for a long time is I want to see comics getting sold. I want to see comics, I want to see these orders go up. And this is absolutely positive news.
Right.
So I'd love to see it. Really, though, I kind of just use this as a neat little segue to talk about this news story, which I think is extremely cool.
Oops, beat you to it.
Did they? Oh, nice. Thank you, Comic Tropes. I was having kind of one of those moments where my brain wasn't caffeinated enough. Apparently, it was Absolute Batman, sold over 200K. Thank you very much for pointing that out. Not to mention that it's not really something we're going to cover for a news story, but Absolute Wonder Woman just kind of got its big reveal as well. So there's kind of some excitement and buzz generated around that right now. Terminator sold over 60K. That's pretty impressive too. Also very cool. But I'm excited about this. I'm a big fan of non-sports cards, basically, is what I'll call them, collectible cards. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And this is the Transformers 40th anniversary limited edition trading card set coming to us from our friends over at Dynamite, which is really cool. Obviously, the license holder is Hasbro, but they're partnering with them on this one. As you can see, it's already raised over $186,000. That is awesome. I think this is really cool. Yeah, just a little bit of support, a little bit of love out there. But yeah, one thing I think is kind of neat about this is there's like all kinds of chase cards that are being included with the sets, depending on which way you go. Like you can get sketch cards, metal cards, signed cards. Very fun stuff.
Different kinds of product packs. Is that what we're looking at?
Yeah. So there's
the different ones.
I'm getting a bit of an echo too, by the way. I don't know if that's me or you, but there's a traditional collector series, which is a mixed foil pack of 10 cards with randomly inserted rares to find in every box. Oh yeah, our producer just let me know that I should probably drop the link. That's a good idea. I'll go ahead and drop the link in there. Yeah, so you guys can follow along here and kind of check it out for yourself if it's hard to read on your screen. But yeah. Good news. Nick Barucci will transform his body into a chase card inserted into one foil pack. But when he transforms back into Nick Barucci, that's up to him. So you really have to you kind of are rolling the dice there.
Just add water.
Just add water. Yeah, so that's the traditional collector series. The deluxe ultra premiums are collectible mini boxes of 7 premium cards guaranteed in every foil pack. And like I said, there's just a lot of cool stuff to love here. There's characters that weren't featured in other media that are being featured in this card set. 110 base cards in a complete set. 110 rainbow parallels, which are awesome for people that collect cards. 6 creator art cards from Bob. I'm trying to read his last name first. Bob Budiansky, and 6 creator art cards from Simon Furman. 41 of a kind unique single print cards. So I mean, there's something here for everybody. There's the trading card binder that you can go for as well. Uncut card sheets. This is just awesome. I think we're past the initial there was an early backer reward where you got like a 5x7 thing. I think we're past that point, but hey, maybe if you back it now, maybe you beat it under the buzzer there. I can't remember exactly when it launched. But I think it's really cool. Something worth checking out. So
yeah. That's cool. I love the original packaging art,
yeah. Oh my gosh, dude. I just have so much nostalgia for kind of the cube grid kind of art style or whatever from those boxes. Right. Like every time I saw one, it's just an instant association with happiness. Right.
Right. Yeah.
So honestly, you know what? I'll leave the last couple news stories. They're not really that big of a deal. Like, one of them's, I'll just tell you what they are real fast. One of them's about Bo DeMaio talking about what his Raid, the movie Raid, his script that he was going to write for Blade, what it would have been like. It's not really a news story as much as it is just kind of fun, but basically he would have done like a Raid style Blade script. I mean, there's really all there is to say to it. And the other thing I'll leave just in case we wrap up early because it's more of a discussion point. Because I think it could kind of create some fun discussion. So I'll kind of tease that we do have some stuff to talk about at the end here. But I really want to get into the meat of our conversation here. Yeah. If you get enough foil cards, you can transform it into Energon cubes. I love it. Let's see. I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything else in chat here coming through.
I love that he actually was able to do the sound effect. That
is pretty cool. Yeah, they would. Yeah, that's a good point. They'd make good gifts for people too. And I know it is print to order, so whatever is ordered, that's what they're going to print, which is what that means. If you're always wondering what that means, so yeah, basically this is your chance to get them, which is pretty cool too. I think that's really
like those ones in the '90s that had the rounded corners. They were similar. The packaging art, and they did them for G.I. Joe too back in the 90s. But,
my fingers are crossed that, you mean, obviously, I think reading between the lines, I have no insider information on this, but I imagine if this does well, we could hope to see like a G.I. Joe set down that would be awesome, right? That would be really cool. I'm not saying I in no way know that would happen for sure, but I think that's just
We can
something
always
like
hope.
Keith Lamp. Yeah, it would definitely give them some ammo to go to the negotiating table with, right?
We have some positivity.
Yeah. Oh, hey, you know what? We got a couple minutes before we take a break. And we have a super chat from this awesome comic YouTuber named Comic Tropes. Let's use this as a palate cleanser before we dive into our topic. Let's answer this question.
Okay.
Big B, why don't you go first?
Okay. So in high school, all my friends called me Big B. And Big B. And because my actual name is Brian. And there's also a Dungeons and Dragons character named Big B that a lot of spells are named after. So I kind of like, oh, Big B, that's kind of cool. And then I'm friends with Comics with Bueller, and a long time ago he told me I should start a channel and we do stuff together. And so I was like, well, McFly and Bueller, that'd be kind of cool. I mean, that I've only been a couple times, did a couple things with Bueller, but that's where I didn't want to use my real name. So Big B McFly, the comic book.
Nice. For me, everyone assumes that it's because I like Bronze Age comics, which happens to be true. I do like Bronze Age comics quite a bit. And really what it was is I was coming up with a channel name and I was like, man, I want something to do with comic books that isn't only about comic books. Like I intentionally decided not to have comics in my name because I was like, well, I do want to talk about some other stuff like movies and games. And I ended up really focusing on comic books. So as it turns out, I probably could have just stuck with something with comics in my name. But I was trying to give myself some flexibility in case I wanted to discuss something other than specifically comic books. So I was like, okay, what kind of thing could I do? And I went through a lot of different names and hated most of them. They were either too long or too basic, like they didn't provide any kind of identity. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm a nerd for sure. And I like to collect, that's a nice Silver Age key. That's a nice Silver Age comic. That's a nice Copper Age comic, right? I was like, well, I was born in the Bronze Age. So I guess I was right at the very end of the Bronze Age, I might add. So I guess I'm a Bronze Age nerd. And that's what I came up with. Do I constantly want to change my name? Yes, I do. Because I learned way after the fact. Like I did some searches and stuff like that. Way after the fact, I searched around and looked for bronze comic channels. There are tons of comic books that have bronze. There's Bronze and Modern Gods. I'm going to blank on all the rest of them right now, but I've encountered like 5 or 6 other ones they're notably larger channels that have that in their name. So in fact, somebody earlier today mixed up a story that Bronze and Modern Gods reported on with something that I reported on, which it's kind of confusing. They both had hero in the name, so it makes kind of some sense. But anyways, I constantly get confused with other people. And I do kind of I've thought about changing the name of my channel and just calling myself Bronze Age Nerd. Best Coast Comics was one of the names I thought about changing it to. It's part of the reason that I liked it for this show that we're doing now. So yeah, I've had that name rattling around for a while. Just sort of thought about it. Yeah, I mean, that's part of it too, is good point, Chris, because I definitely never expected this to be anything. Like I expected to do it for a few months, kind of make some videos about my history with comic book collecting and just kind of getting my thoughts out there. But it kind of just, it was scratching a creative itch. It was, I was learning stuff, which is what I liked about it the most, is I was learning video editing, and I was learning lighting, and I was learning audio. And as long as I kept doing that, I was pretty happy with it. So really great question.
Yeah. Good question.
Banned for life. Yeah, it does have the benefit of ban, and some people have referred to me as the ban hammer. That's a fun nickname. I like that one. So that was pretty cool. Ooh, yeah, Leonard, I'm definitely going to address your comment. Just so you know, it is saved. We're going to talk about that kind of element of it. Before I do that, though, we do have to take a commercial break. I just wanted to point out real fast, we are broadcasting, like I said earlier, on Big P's channel, my channel, and over on the EXP networks, their Facebook and all that kind of stuff. And one of the things they do over on the EXP is they do sponsors. So they have sponsors helping to promote their stuff, and they also sponsor and promote their own shows. I think some of those shows are really amazing. I find myself watching the EXP quite a bit, actually. So why don't you guys check out some of the ads for that? And in a couple minutes, we're going to talk about positivity and negativity in the comic book community. See you back here in 1 minute.
Live from New York. What? Oh, sorry. Live from Cleveland? It's Friday night? It's Friday Night Live! With Nancy McCann. And Ricky. And sometimes Carlos. And featuring boxes and boxes of rare comics. Unique collectibles. Lots of smiles and conversations with new friends. Friday Night Live with Comics Unlimited. Friday night from 9 to 11 on The Experience.
Symphonic verses, Nocturne's romance. A song of romanticized darkness, dreaming death by sleep.
It's not just what happens when you have too many energy drinks anymore. Check out our content over there, too.
Hey, welcome back to the Best Coast Comics. Once again, I am Christopher, a.k.a. the Bronze Age Nerd, and this is...
Big B McFly, the comic guy.
And you just heard the origins of those stories. If you were following us before the break, if you didn't catch that, you can go back and watch it on the rewind. So those were some of the things you can go check out over on the EXP. One other additional thing that's not included in those that I wanted to talk about is something that really cool that's happening on Tuesday at 6 Eastern, 5 Central, 4 Pacific. You can catch Talk and Shop on the 8th. That's going to be on the 8th of October, which is a Tuesday. And a very special guest is going to be on that show over on the EXP. Scott Snyder. So you definitely want to go check out that show. That's really cool. It's going to be a fun interview. So I highly recommend going and checking that out.
For sure.
Son of Crom said his dad wanted to name him Highlander, but I guess there could be only one. Hey, Son of Crom, I mean, you're still in a very epic company there with the Conan name.
This guy is in our neighborhood. And he has a great channel. So I guess check him out. He's all about Conan. So.
Oh, right on. That's very cool. Very cool. And we got Comic Ozzy in here as well. What's up, Comic Ozzy? I don't think I missed anybody else. I hope I didn't miss anybody else. So we're going to talk about different things about positivity and negativity in comic books. And it's not like it's really like strictly structured in my mind. This is going to be a little bit more of like a freeform conversation about positivity and negativity. But I do want to, I'll just give you the overlay here. We are going to talk about positive and negative stuff that affects comic book collectors, positive and negative stuff that affects comic book readers, comic book sellers, and also comic book content creators. And I think there's a lot of overlap between those. So even though we're talking about one of those things, you're like, well, I'm not a comic book seller, or I'm not a comic book content creator. You might be surprised to hear about how those things can affect you, the negativity in those scenes, and also just the positive techniques that might be applied to correct those things. I think it's still going to be an interesting conversation. So the very first part of that I want to talk to is the positivity and negativity that can be an aspect for comic book collectors. And the first thing about that sticks out to me is what happens over and over and over again. I am super guilty of having this happen to me. It's comparing your lifestyle or your comic book collection to others. Mm-hmm. So somebody goes along and they post that they just got some huge key comic book, like some Grail comic book that you're just like blown away that somebody actually owns that piece of vintage paper, right? Has it ever happened to you, Bigby? You know anybody like that? That's like, do they ever like? What was that? I saw there was a little thing that came up on the bottom of your screen. What was that? Did you? Oh boy. Well.
This is positivity in like don't ever let go of like your goals and working towards things. Like it can make things happen. So
100%. I'm being a little cheeky. I told Bigby I was going to give him cue him up for pointing this out. But this is perfect because we can talk about this on two different levels. First of all, and I've said this before to you in private, but congratulations, dude. Like, that's really seriously awesome.
I'm so happy to have this. I can't tell you guys how happy I am.
You got to give us the quick story. Like, it doesn't have to be like a long story, but give us the quick story on how you acquired that.
A friend of mine, Travis from Comics Limited, someone from his church who had their whole family learned to read from comic books. They had a lot of golden age and all kinds of stuff, and they reached out to him and said that they were looking for somebody to liquidate those books, and this happened to be one of the books, and I made an offer, and they accepted. So that's the long and short of it.
That's so awesome. I'm so happy for you, dude, because there was a I won't get into it too much other than to say that there was a journey here, right?
It was a journey,
yeah, and that journey included, ups and downs, and I think it's perfect.
There was points where I thought I wasn't going to get it, like the price, the discussion of the price was going up and down, and to a point where it would be out of reach for me, and I was like, well, I guess I'm just, that's part of like accepting, your limitations and stuff and everything. And I was like, okay, well, maybe I just won't be able to get this, and a lot of people came together and helped me selling things. Richard being one of them. Thank you, Richard, buying some stuff from me to help me afford to buy the book. And I can't say thank you enough to everybody who has helped me out with it. So including a friend of ours, Ryan from Automatic Comics. So thanks a lot. I appreciate everything you did to help me with this too. So.
Yeah, a lot of great reactions coming through here. Hey, K-pop junkie. Look, I've said before, like I have 3 grails in my mind that I would just go bananas if I could get. They're all X-Men related grails, but they're also for the range that I'm looking for. They're also cheaper than that book. So
I had no inkling that I was ever going to have this anytime soon. I made a video of like 80 books that I would hope to have someday, and that was one of them. And it happened.
Yeah. And okay, so it is awesome, and I really am glad we got a chance to show that off and tell that story. And again, congratulations. Yes, it's first print. Yes, but. Let's use that now.
Like a reprint? Oh, yeah, no, it's staples fully attached, nice condition. Original printing.
That is fantastic.
No pun intended.
But for those of you who don't know, I'm getting over being sick, so I kind of have to do that weird laugh. Otherwise, I will start like actually coughing. So I know that's kind of a cheesy laugh, but yeah, so let's talk about this a little bit. So to accomplish something like getting a book like that requires planning, saving, in your case, for example, selling. I mean, that's not always a path that people have to take to acquire comic books, but that's one way you can go about it, of course. Trading, things like that, right? Motivation, perseverance, not giving up. I mean, those are all important factors there too. Like you said, you never thought you were going to have it, but you kind of kept it. You weren't sure even when you first learned about it that it was going to be yours, but you had to kind of keep going on it, right? So all those things can be true. And that's just when you're talking about like for me, for example, X-Men 1, huge grail of mine, like the number 1 grail.
Right. But if you like, let's say someone like Trav came up with an X-Men number 1 and he said, Bronze, I have this, you have first dibs. Can you focus on this? I mean, that's a huge thing to just kind of like knuckle down and be like, I'm not buying anything else. I'm just
Yeah, it's a huge accomplishment, and it requires a lot, but it is something that is an attainable goal in your case. And like you said, you didn't think it was. And I think that's kind of an important way to look at this. So I know Richard made a comment earlier that I wanted to come back to. And this is kind of the element that I want to talk about, which is kind of the negativity and the flip side of this.
Right.
Comparison is the thief of joy. And that is just such an apt thing to bring up here because, for example, you know what? Kamikaze is like, I follow him on Instagram. He sells comic books too, by the way. I highly recommend going and following him on like his whatnots. I bought some comic books from him before. He's a great seller, great dude. He's somebody who's like Instagram I follow, and there's a lot of other people too. That's not just him by any stretch of the imagination, but they'll post like amazing comic books. And in Ozzy's case, like one thing he's done is he's posted like, here's 4 or 5 copies of this amazing comic book, right? And you're just like, whoa. And what can happen, you know, and I think this is kind of the nature of social media in general.
Mm-hmm.
You can look at that and you can go, that's amazing. And one of your follow-up thoughts, and this has happened, you know, with some other people I follow sometimes, one of your follow-up thoughts can be, man, that I'm not going to be able to do that. Like I can't do something that I can't recreate that moment. And whether or not that's something you should be trying to do, whether or not that's a goal that really is something you should be trying to attain, that depends on you and your own collecting goals. But it's something that does happen to people, and it happens to people all the time. Like there are collectors that I've talked to when I've made like videos about comic book collecting tips or things you can do to acquire, you know, your Grail comic books or things you can do to have your collection be what you want it to be instead of just stuff you read over the years, which is also totally fine if that's what you want, by the way. But people that are actually trying to collect certain comic books, not just read and buy comic books when they come out. Both very valid types of collectors, by the way. That's not the point I'm trying to make. And by the way, most both. But the problem is there's people that they specifically want to be comic book collectors and collect certain books, and especially during the pandemic, when prices were insanely high for comic books,
right.
You had people doing really bad for themselves things, you know, going into debt, spending money off their credit cards, selling basically gambling on comic books is kind of what I'll ascribe it to. And that's a huge part of the reason why I made the top 5 not to buy video series that I made for a long time, is because I saw that happening. I saw it kind of like ruining people's lives in a way. And that's all very real stuff that happens. Not everybody.
I would encourage people like that was a big thing for me, was I didn't want to be, you know, I didn't want to put it on a credit card or anything like that. I wanted to pay for it and have the money squared away. So,
yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those things where I really want people to know that you're not alone if you feel that way. Like that's kind of the important part. But also those feelings don't have to run how you feel about comic book collecting either. Like that doesn't have to be what comic book collecting is. Those are really normal things that people follow fitness influencers, and they're like, man, I'm never going to be in that good of a shape. I'm not. Well, first of all, you may not look like that. Even if you were in the best shape of your life, you might look like a different type of person because you're a different person. Right. They might be using filters. They might be using tricks to make it look like they're in more shape than they are. There's a cosplayer I follow. She's awesome. Brianna Torres, and she'll post videos every once in a while. She's like, this isn't what I like. These pictures I post, that's not what I look like. Like, here's me 2 seconds before I took that photo. And then here's me, you know, flexing to take that photo. They're not the same, you know, image if you put them side by side. It's not that it's Photoshop necessarily, but that's a really common thing for like fitness photos. You know, like, for example, like I would look, if I flexed right now, you guys would all be super impressed at what I look like. Right. But I mean, that's the kind of stuff that, you know, people posting pictures of new cars they got. It's that idea that you're seeing the highlight reel of somebody else's life, and you're comparing 10, 15, 20, 30 people's highlight reels. in 5 minutes of scrolling to your entire life. And that's not sustainable or realistic.
My wife and I just talked about that, where we're like, and you're watching this highlight reel of people, like either on vacation or whatever. And who's to say that they're not like 5 seconds before they took that little video or that little photo, snarling mad, screaming at each other and go, hey, just a second, let's catch this moment. And then they're like back to it. We don't know what people are going through. It is an unfortunate sign of the times right now, where it's like we see a lot of like false everything's wonderful with everybody in a lot of things that people are going through. We have no idea. So
yeah. Yep. Hey, Jay knows that's her at, by the way, for the cosplayer I was talking about. Does wonderful cosplays too. Yeah, does a really good job. Richard says your competition is not another person; it's your attitude, your work ethic, and your daily behaviors.
Richard, you're so awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll never be like Richard.
and that's kind of this idea, it's comparing yourself to others can lead to negativity. That's where I see a lot of it. And the other part of it that I see negativity, and this is something I've talked about before in some of my videos, is when, again, we're kind of talking specifically about comic book collectors that are trying to acquire like certain books or certain runs or certain characters, appearances, or certain types of covers, those types of collectors, not people who are just buying comics to read. A lot of times what I see happen, and I know people personally, I know people that have talked to me in DMs, people that have commented on my videos, they end up they chase big books, or they buy a lot of comic books thinking like, these are valuable. This comic book's worth $20 and I'm going to sell it when it's worth $50 and use that to fund my collecting hobby. And you can do that. You absolutely can do that. But you have to be honest with yourself when you're buying that comic book. Are you going to flip it? Are you going to sell it? Flipping is such a loaded term. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But are you going to later down the road sell that comic book if that was your original intention in buying it? Mm-hmm. I know hundreds of collectors that they end up just accruing all these comic books and kind of sitting on them, and they're like, how come I can't get the comic book collection I want? It's a lot of comic book collectors. How come I can't get the comic book collection I really want? But they're sitting on a throne of like paper that isn't, in some cases, a house of paper that isn't really what they actually set out to collect and buy. And a couple strategies, positivity, things to think about. Big D said he had a list of, 80 comic books that you wanted to own someday?
Yeah, like X-Men #1, Avengers #1, first Iron Man, all these big books, and some of them were smaller ones. Like I had like first Mantis, first, Black Knight, that just random first appearances of characters. First, first Ant-Man will be a big one, but just a list of,
right, from varying degrees of value, varying degrees. But the point is,
to hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, and there's lots of different ways to do this. But the point is to look down the road and say, what would my comic book collection look like to where I would be happy with it? Mm-hmm. And I know that sounds really simple, but a lot of people can't do that. And a lot of people that start to do that, they start to realize something. It's not what your collection that will look like in the end that will make you happy. Because you're going to have those books at that end point, and you're going to go, well, what's next? What's next? Right.
I was immediately, as soon as I got that FF, I had some irons in the fire for some other big books. I was like, what is wrong with you? Take a minute and enjoy this book, and don't even.
Right. And like before you had it, I bet you said I would take a year to enjoy this book, right?
Right.
Not a minute. And that's the thing. That's the dopamine hit of like, I've acquired this thing. Okay, what's next?
Right.
There doesn't have to be a what's next, but the lesson that is, if you're that kind of person, it's not about the book. It's about the journey to get the book.
Right.
And so
I would say like not just your personal journey, but your journey with the people around you. Like, hanging out with Bronze and with all the guys that I've been going to conventions with, and my friends, and talking to people on Instagram, and selling the books to acquire this book and everything. It's part of the journey and the memories that you're making while you're doing that, and just enjoying that journey. Yeah.
And that's kind of where I was going with this is think about what actually is giving you happiness. And it's okay to have a list if that's how you want to do it. It's okay to have a budget and say, well, I'm going to spend this much every month or every year or whatever on comic books. But try to stick to that stuff. Try to stick to that, because it doesn't have to be about material possessions. Right. Collecting, it's kind of like a catch-22, because collecting is about the material possession. That's literally, you're collecting things, but you can also collect memories. You can also collect the experiences of doing that, right? And that's a very valid point. Lots of great comments are coming through the chat. I promise that we will get to them as time allows. Well, time will allow, but we're not going to necessarily stop what we're saying just to read a great comment that comes through. But we're also not necessarily ignoring your comment. So for me, when it comes to comic book collecting, that's kind of some of the negativity that I thought of. And like, those are some of the ways that you can kind of address it, just like that idea again of a collector. Again, we'll talk about readers, we'll talk about sellers, we'll talk about content creators, lots of different things. Is there anything else you can think of, Big B, when it comes to comic book collectors that you think about when you think about either ways that things get negative or ways you can stay positive?
We kind of touched on it, like overextending yourself, putting yourself in a position where you feel like you're buried with how am I going to move all these things to get the things that I want, or how did I get to this point? And there is something freeing. I'll tell you, at one point, I've sold my collection multiple times over my life, and at some points, just getting rid of everything and starting over was very freeing, or getting rid of everything and being out of it for 6 or 8 months.
Yeah.
Just like, oh, I'm free. I don't have to worry about sorting and bagging and boarding and keeping up with this and that and the other, and what's on my shelf and what's going to be coming out and who's writing what. It's just like, okay, I'm free. I can enjoy what I want to enjoy and start collecting again.
Hey, what's up, Collector P? Feeling better, by the way. Thanks for asking. Hope you're doing well, and thanks for joining the show. Yeah, that's another thing too that can size of your collection and this was something I was going to mention for readers too. So it applies to both, because readers, I think this is especially true for a lot of readers, because they'll I bought a collection from a reader, somebody who just reads comic books, and he read comic books for years and years and years, the only collection I've ever bought. And he would, so he'd be on a consecutive title for a very long time. And he's like, I read them, a couple of them I reread, but now they're just taking up space in my garage. Like, that's what I did with them. I read them, and now they're just like this albatross of stuff in his garage. Right. So he ultimately just wanted them gone. He's like,
some people feel that way about media and stuff. And I've talked to people who are like, you don't go and buy like People magazine or whatever and read it and expect for it to appreciate in value. You just read it and you throw it away, right?
Yeah,
or newspaper or whatever. But we as collectors of comics, we expect these things to be worth money.
For sure. And I think that's and again, we'll get into it a little bit more when it comes to just pure readers, but that problem of accumulating too many comics, there's a couple strategies. And yeah, I've sold my collection. I kept about 5 short boxes, and that was it. But I sold all my long boxes and everything. Part of it was very freeing. Mm-hmm. Eventually some regrets creeped in, like, oh man, I can't believe I sold that. Man, I can't believe I sold that. I can't believe I sold that. But really, honestly, since I did keep the stuff that I liked the most, one thing I learned that if I'm ever going to do something like that again, when it comes to downsizing, I'm not saying I am, but if I ever did do that, I would create like a physical space of like, okay, this is how many comic books I want to have. And I would just like make that a reality. Just pare it down. Okay, well, that's, doesn't matter. 8 boxes, whatever it is. Okay, well, what's going to fill those 8 boxes? And then everything else, bye. Let's sell it. Let's get rid of it. Let's give it to other people. Whatever, it's gone. That's one way you could do that. If the being overwhelmed by a paper empire is starting to be a problem for you, and it really is for a lot of collectors. I know a lot of collectors that, especially when they move, then they start to remember like, oh yeah, I've really got a ton of these things, or it takes over their house.
Well, I have something I'll have to show you, but I have a little wooden box that I made in shop when I was in junior high school, and I wood burned a little rainbow in it, and it says comics. And I was like, wow, if I ever have enough comics to fill this box, I will have a lot. This box is like half the size of a short box.
Wow. Wow. I mean, that definitely puts it into perspective. Psycho Phil said it. My wife plays a large part in determining the size of my collection. That is, look, I am not a delusional person to think that most of the people we're talking to are probably of a certain age, that they're most likely cohabitating with somebody else, and or you have space requirements of other kinds. But that's going to be a consideration as well. Is, you know, does your family want all that comic stuff around? And you might say, oh, that's a non-negotiable for me. Like, as many comics as I want to have, that's how many I'm going to have. But that's a factor, right? Like, you have to take that into consideration. That's going to be a hill to die on, right? Most of us are probably going to have some give and take with those in our lives about how much space that can take up.
My wife has not yet seen the FF #1. She says she doesn't feel that she will give it the appropriate ooh-ah, and then I will be upset. And I'm like, oh, you could say, wow, that's a piece of junk, you know, but just wanted to show it to you. Just want to share it with you. But
yeah, I mean, that dives into a whole different part of the conversation too, that I guess is very relevant, which is how others others in your life view your comic book collecting in a negative way sometimes, or like not positive, right?
I think in your notes you had to think about people hating on what you collect, right? And then maybe not necessarily other collectors, but people that they go like, you collect comic books, really? That's like your thing, you know? But I share that with everybody, and I have no shame in it.
Well, I mean, you and me are both of an age we can remember, and I'm sure a lot of people in chat remember what it was like saying you collected comic books to people.
No, yeah, it wasn't cool being a nerd back in the day. Now it is. Now it's cool to be a nerd. It wasn't cool to be a nerd back in the day.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Space Case wants to know what's the size of everyone's collection. I'm around 2,500, they think. I think I'm around 6,000-ish, probably.
I'm around a giant room.
Yeah. Can confirm. So yeah, and there are some other comments too I want to get into in here. I think this goes back to the FF. Kamikaze says, makes me the happiest when I can get someone into a grail they have been dreaming about. That's got to be a very rewarding feeling.
Awesome. Yeah, I was in a stream with Ozzy on Whatnot the other night, and he had some amazing books. So you guys check him out. He's great. He's got some beautiful high grade books that I was just like drooling over.
Yeah, for sure. So we do have to take another ad break. We're going to take our second ad break tonight. And when we come back, we're going to kind of transition into talking about a different type of comic book negativity and positivity. Although, again, it's all very much overlapping. So I think you guys will find a lot of value in it, whether it affects you or not personally. But follow back in 2 minutes and we will see you here.
Whoa. Did you miss it? Yeah, they can go by pretty fast. Let's slow down the footage.
Welcome. It's time to skim some comics. Miles Morales Spider-Man, I will just tell you that Miles is very important in his role as a vampire. So.
It's fine. If you like Hercules, read it. If you don't like it, don't worry about it. It's fine.
The art is still stunning. There's a panel, little spoiler, there's a panel in this where Chitauri first hits Lion-O, and he is the best "did she really just hit me" face I've ever seen put in a comic book.
Wow, live reviews of new comic books so you can be ready for New Comic Book Day. What is this? Oh, I see. It's Minute to Skim It. Part of the experience.
According to a statistic that I just made up, people spend 4 hours a day changing the television channel. People who watch The Experience don't do that. Save yourself a ton of time by tuning into The Experience and enjoying our new original programming 7 days a week. And then tell your friends. Think about the money they could save on batteries in the remote alone, just by tuning into the experience. Find out more by scanning the QR code below.
In a world where you hit like and subscribe on our YouTube channel,
That'd be really great, thanks.
I love that song. I like those every time I dance to it.
You're like just getting down backstage.
Yeah, it makes me go. If it was any longer than that, I probably wouldn't have that reaction. But for that short clip, I like it. I just want to pour one out real fast for Space Case, who went as Giant Man for Halloween in 1988.
Wow.
Obscure Hank Pym. In 1998, nobody knew I was supposed to be. And the worst part is then you got to try to explain it to them, and they're like, "I don't what." We get a lot of trick or treaters where I live. 'Tis the season, right? That's coming up. We get a lot of trick or treaters now. I'm usually out trick or treating with my kids, so I don't have to deal with it. But when I did, it was just like, oh my gosh, like what are you? Because you feel bad, you want to hey, nice costume, but what is that?
We were thinking that even like at some of the cosplay, because we don't know all of the different. As big a nerds as we are, we don't know everything, right?
Yeah.
And we're like, that's beautiful. What are you?
For me, it's always anime. It's because it's such a big blank spot for me. But I mean, I shouldn't say it's always, but a lot of times it is. And sometimes it's like, oh, it's the obscure version of this character. I'm like, oh, I know who that is. I just didn't think about it.
Yeah, the alternate version of the alternate universe, dark side version of.
Yeah. Let's see. I want to make sure if any of these other comments that I had saved are relevant to this part of the conversation.
Jay, don't you dare put picture in picture.
No. Without Comic Journey, by the way, I didn't say hello to you earlier. Hello, Comic Journey. Without competitiveness, there's no innovation, progressing, achieving greater things. There needs to be a balance in life. Life without drive and motivation is not very fruitful. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a flip side of the way to look at it. But it's obviously your choice. I don't think you have to look at comic books as being competitive, though. Right. But you're obviously, if they, there's things like the CGC, not the census. What do I want to call it? The census. There's a competition using the census. I can't remember what they call it.
Yeah,
but
they basically points, right? Then they also have for different series. Also, you can have the points for Batman, or you can have the points for the highest graded, the highest point collection for.
Yeah. And there's plenty of people that do that, and that's cool. I think there's nothing wrong with that if that's what drives you about collecting. But I think it's important to point out it's not necessary, because what I think most people do, and I think this is totally valid, is they compete against an idealized version of their collection, or an idealized version of themselves, or an idealized version of whatever. And so, I mean, you're kind of doing it in that way too.
Or somebody who has way more resources than you do, or as long as you're happy in the competition and the drive that you're trying to accomplish, then sure, but don't make it where it makes you happy.
Yeah. Leonard says, my collection has ebbed and flowed over the years. Trading and selling with friends or a comic shop, the thrill of the hunt. And I think a lot of us can relate to that, Leonard. And that's a really great point. Something I wish I hit harder, Son of Chrome. I would rather give them for free to someone that truly wants them and appreciate them. I think I mentioned give them away, but yeah, there's a big movement in our scene, kind of, if you will, like AOKs, right? Like, somebody's going to love that comic book. Well, go ahead and give it to them. If it's something where you're like, I want to downsize this and I want to make somebody else happy, that's a great way to do it.
I sent a bunch of stuff to, who was it? To Halia and to some of our friends that we were on a live stream together, and I was just like, "Oh, you like that? Here you go."
Figure drawing. Your efforts are noble, but every time I try to get into anime, I just can't. Like it's not like I've never watched anime. There's some anime I just kind of stumble upon and I end up liking it, but it's really hard for me to get into. It's just the style, I guess. I don't know what it is. I've tried, and I just keep bouncing off a wall when it comes to it. But I will keep trying, and I'll try to mentally add that to my list.
Was that I sent that little clip to our group the other night, and it was like, "Hey, I've got a great superhero story that's like years in the making," and it was started off with My Hero Academia, and then it goes, "Nah," and it was Cyclops and the X-Men.
Nice. As a follow-up comment, Journey says, if there was no competitiveness in collecting, people would only read digital or get the trade pack. I don't agree with that, but I mean, those are also completely valid. There's people that do that. For example, most of the new comics I read digital, but
I want to guess at what Crom's question is.
Oh, okay. Let's see here. Could you please tell us your other two grails besides X-Men 1? Oh boy, maybe you forgot.
I got one. One is First Juggernaut, right?
Oh, okay. So you don't know.
Okay.
So here's the hint for people. By the way, first of all, thank you for the $5 super chat, Son of Crumb. The hint is I call it the holy trinity of X-Men books, and it all involves first appearances. So
okay, so I know that too. Then it's GSX, and Hulk 181.
Yes, and now to be fair, I already have Hulk 180, so technically for me that's the first appearance, but I still want the full appearance.
I get your 182, so I hook you up.
I've got a 182. I've got 180 and 182.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah. Yep.
You're just missing that middle piece.
I'm just that little insignificant middle piece, that nobody wants.
Oh, that's a good one. That Richard said 4. 4 is also.
Oh yeah.
4 and 12.
Oh,
right?
trust me. 12 is the first Juggernaut. Yeah. Yeah. They're definitely. So 12 is the book that I wanted to get this year. I'm kind of punting on my list this year. I don't think I'm going to necessarily do it because I feel like if I really save up and push, I could probably possibly get an X-Men one. So
he's going to see if he has one laying around. Well, we both need most of this.
Hey, by all means. I will say the 180 that I have in my collection was an AOK that somebody sent me. So I will eternally be grateful for that. That was so amazing.
There's so many great people out there that do amazing things for everybody. I mean,
yeah, and I mean that's a huge part of the positivity is be the change in the world you want to see,
right?
And that's by the way, before I was going to get done reading the comments and I was going to mention this, we did come back from our last ad break. We are streaming over on Big B's channel. He is now monetized. If you didn't catch that earlier in the show, please go give him a sub and also go sub up over on the EXP channel and make sure that you're following along for some of the great content you saw ads for over there. We'd really appreciate it. The next type of negativity that I want to talk about, and this is kind of a strange one, kind of a loaded one in a way. But again, we're going to talk about the positivity that can come from that as well. It's the negativity around sellers and selling. And that's a weird one.
All of these.
What's that?
So I can relate to all of these.
Yeah. My goal is to get more of John Byrne's X-Men and those are, I love John Byrne. X-Men especially. I will never turn down John Byrne FF, but his Alpha Flight, his X-Men, definitely stuff I'm after. I'm a low grade is better than no grade kind of a guy. I literally am looking for like a 0.5 or 1.0 X-Men 1, entry level. I bought an FF48 recently. It had a detached cover. I'm totally I didn't know it was detached when I bought it, which kind of sucks. But hey, I'm fine with that because I'd rather have a for Silver Surfer than not have a for Silver Surfer. You can always upgrade later on.
Don't look at it
like
get forks in the mouth, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Well, and it's one of those things too, where it's like, there's so many comic books where I've told the story a lot of times. There was a 1.0 signed by Stan Lee X-Men 1 that I almost could have afforded. And I was like this close to pulling the trigger on it, and it shot up like to twice its value the following week after I didn't buy it. That was when X-Men 1 started taking off, and it's been taking off ever since. And it's kind of come back to earth a little bit, but
I told you about the copy that somebody found in my other group. They were like, "Hey, anybody have was it $85,000 or $95,000 laying around?" And they posted a picture of X-Men #1, and I go, "That's my X-Men #1 that I had to sell."
Seriously?
Yeah.
How do you know it was yours?
It had a delivery date written on it in grease pencil, and it was the same exact way it was written. And it was, when I took it and showed it to Chris at I Like Comics, and he said he thought it was in the 9 range.
Wow.
And I had to sell it back in the day. So yeah, that's a soul killer right there.
Yeah. Well, and I don't think I can even come close to relating to that, but that definitely is a real issue. It's, man, I'm sorry, man. I'm feeling for you right now just hearing that story.
You gotta do what you gotta do, right? I mean, there's times where there are things that are more important than comic books.
Yeah, and that's very true too. Like I sold most of my comic book collection when my daughter joined my family, and we had to move into a smaller place. We couldn't afford space to store comic books. I couldn't afford a storage unit. They just had to go. And like I said, for the most part, it was kind of a freeing thing once it finally happened. But there's a lot of comic books that were in there that took off over the last few years that I definitely could have made up the ground to buy an X-Men 1 if I'd kept them all, not to compare to that story, because that's definitely a different league.
Mine was a collection accrued over 20 plus years ago in 2 comic shops, and it was almost all Silver Age runs, really nice stuff, and then it had to go.
Yeah. It's the kind of stuff like that makes me happy in like a karmic sense, to see you get like that FF1, man. Like, I mean, I know it doesn't make up for it, but I just, it's one of those things where it's like,
I think things balance out. Yeah.
Right. The scales eventually, you hope they kind of do find balance.
Yeah.
But
and like we said, more important than the books themselves are the journeys and the people that we meet along the way, and how they weave themselves into that tapestry of our understanding of that book and what it means to us. So like, some books that I have that are not worth a whole lot, but they mean a whole lot to me. So I mean, just because of where they came from and how they came to be in my collection. So
yeah, and a couple great points there, and one of them too is the other way I look at it is you wouldn't be where you are now if certain things hadn't happened the way they'd happened too. And
right.
I mean, I think some of that stuff is truly great. I'm just, that's still something I know is going to sting when you think about it, for sure.
Well, you got to either move on or don't. I mean, if you don't move on, then you're just going to dwell on it and be depressed forever. I mean, let's move on. Yeah,
another great positivity strategy. So let's talk about those dirty flippers. No. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's something that I've been accused of before. We're talking about comic books selling and how it's viewed. And the anytime this topic comes up, the first thing I have to say is this kind of weird hypocrisy where people look down on people that sell comic books as individuals. Like if they bought a comic book and they sell it for more than they bought it for, and they make some money on it, there is this kind of negativity that brews around that. And I always ask those people, so it's okay if you're a comic shop? Like if you're a comic shop and somebody brings in a collection and you buy it for pennies on the dollar and sell it for full FMV, that's totally cool. But if an individual does that, they're like demonized or something. It's very strange. But it does happen, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so to me, the negativity that swirls around this is just how sellers are viewed. And then also what they receive from their buyers sometimes, like as far as, and this goes both ways, buying and selling, being scammed by buyers or sellers, having somebody have completely unrealistic expectations as a buyer, as far as either payment, shipping speed, shipping quality. There's sellers I know that are legit in the top tier of best sellers that I've ever encountered, that have had people come at them and be like, I ordered this yesterday, how come it's not here yet? It's like, what? Yeah, and it's just one of those things where it is interesting to think about and I'm not saying like, anybody needs to cry for sellers or any of that kind of stuff. I'm not trying to just point that out, but what I am trying to point out is that the negativity I see directed at comic book sellers sometimes feels very projected, like kind of a little misguided. And I feel like a lot of times people are very much only thinking of themselves, and they're not thinking about like, okay, this is a transaction. And ideally people walk away from that transaction with both sides feeling happy with everything that happened. That's the ideal scenario that's going to happen, but that's not always the case. Right. So ultimately my advice is to do the right thing as either a buyer or a seller, and you're going to have a good time most of the time. That's just kind of how I feel about it. I know I could tell from when we first started talking about this, Big B, that you had some thoughts on selling, and kind of what happens. What do you want to talk about?
Like I've bought from people who've had offers from shops, and I'll, beat the offer that the shop has or whatever, give them a little more than what the shop would give them. But ultimately it's knowledge and knowing where to move and what to move the books for, is it's the knowledge that you've accrued, that you've spent all this time over your whole life learning this stuff. Like you said, when you see me looking through a box and I'm pulling books out, it's just like stuff that's in there by rote now. Like I just, okay, yeah. that, or that should be worth money, but I don't think it's bad to make money on something, especially if somebody's happy with what they're getting, I'm very straightforward with people. Like a lot of like elderly people in my area will spread word of mouth, and I'll tell them what their books are worth. Yeah. I'll show them the pricing guide app and show them this is exactly what it's worth. This is what you can expect to get from a shop. If I can't afford it, I'll tell them, like I can't afford this, but I can help you sell it elsewhere. Or if you're going to take it to a shop, you're going to expect to get X amount of dollars from them, and don't take less than, whatever. Yeah. So, just being a good person though is part of it. There are people who do give it a bad name, I'm sure. I know. Yeah. But,
well, and that's part of it too, is that sellers do be out there doing some shady stuff. like that's not, I'm not going to deny that. Buyers do too. And right. I'm not trying to pit one side against the other or pick a side there. I'm just trying to point out that there's problems on both sides of that equation that I've seen personally, and just kind of from watching and closely observing the comic book community. And I think that, I guess what I would just say is if you're a seller and the negativity is getting you down, just know that like the majority of your customers that aren't complaining or aren't, being negative or trying to scam you, or you're not having to, chase them down for payment or whatever it is, they're the ones that you should focus your efforts on, not the one that's going to complain no matter what. Because there are people out there that are just looking for handouts. They're looking for refunds. They're looking for free rides, essentially. And I do see that happen a lot. And it is an unfortunate thing
that try to, take the book and sub it out for a different book or whatever, yep. Or, all that kind of stuff. And there's a lot of just having to deal with that. But you and I, like, I think like in the end, it's like whoever is selling, if they're happy with what they're getting, and you're happy with what you're getting, then it's a good transaction. Like you and I have bought from people like on Whatnot and things like that. And it's like, hey, we're getting a good deal. They're happy with what they're getting.
Yeah.
We're happy with what we're getting, cool,
Yeah. And I mean, conversely, I think that doesn't mean, truly bad behavior should be called out. And don't get me wrong. And I've seen some, I've seen some bad sellers do some bad things. I've been affected by some bad sellers. My advice there is, if you really feel like you need to speak out about it, and I've had a lot of people do this to me. They've kind of reached out and said, hey, this thing happened. I think I got kind of ripped off, or I think this is kind of wrong. What should I do? And then look, I'm not Mr. Comic Books or anything like that. But one of the things I do a lot is people will come out to me with like, hey, this happened. What should I do? And I'll kind of talk them through it. I'll be like, well, I understand you're upset, but look at it this way, and kind of walk them through it. And a lot of times it's because they're jumping to conclusions, or they're worried about what could happen without kind of going through what actually can or will happen. I'm like, okay, a mistake was made early in the process, a miscommunication, or funds were sent the wrong way. In other words, don't use friends and family with somebody you don't trust is kind of what I'm trying to say. Make sure you have buyer protection, that kind of stuff, and approach a certain way. But occasionally I do have real stories come through. It's like, okay, somebody's clearly doing the wrong thing. How can we get the word out about somebody who's there's groups about scammers on Facebook, for example, to kind of, trusted sellers that you can trust and ones you can't trust. Pay attention to your Instagram community. That people are pretty good about calling out bad sellers there. And always feel free to hit up people that are experienced, like Kamikaze or Big B or myself or a lot of other people, about who you can trust when it comes to buying comic books, or if you have any questions. If it sounds like it's too good of a deal to be true, it probably is. That kind of stuff applies here very much.
Well, we had that one whatnot where we're like, wow, we're getting a great deal. They didn't get shipped very well, so it was too good to be true.
Yeah, exactly. So the point being, and I know this is a very heated topic for a lot of people, but I think that common sense really plays a lot into it. And I think that reaching out to other people is usually a good resource, whether that's you're having a problem as the seller or whether you're having problems as the buyer, which it's kind of a clever way to talk about both sides of this equation.
You had a great video talking about like you said, like worrying about what might happen with the fella when you got the damaged books from that auction site. And it all turned out wonderfully for you, but because you took a patient route with him and tried to see things from his side, it worked out really well. So
yeah, exactly. It's one of those things where I have a very cynical worldview in general that's built on just my life history, but I also try to be optimistic. I try to look at it, okay, even though I expect this bad thing is going to happen, I'm going to hope that this good thing happens instead. The majority of the time, that works out pretty well. Hey, what's up, MJ Comics? Another great YouTuber on the platform. Definitely recommend going and giving him a follow. He's doing a lot of cool stuff recently. Pleasure to see you here.
Pond, right?
Yeah. From jolly old England, which I'm sure is what people hate when we say if they're from England. I wanted to point out this Pop Sequentialism, which, by the way, definitely go give them a follow. For example, follow their IG. Really great resource. Matt Kennedy over there does an awesome job of talking about original art, for example, which is something he references in this comment. I've been collecting since 1976, bought and sold many collections. Aside from the massive pre-code horror collection I had in my teens, replacing comics is surprisingly easy. Original art, not so much. And that's a fantastic point that I wanted to address. Yeah, definitely.
Things are hard to replace.
Yes. Angry Straight White Male says these types of people ruin the video game hunting as well. Too many YouTubers influencing people to hit garage sales and rip off grandmas to turn around and flip the games. This is always one of those really interesting ones for me. And I've talked to you about this before. I struggle with, I've never actually had it happen. But it's kind of the thought experiment of if somebody did have some crazy good deal on something, what do you like? And the truth is I just think about things too much, and it would be very situation dependent on what actually happens. But I'm always like, what is the right thing to do? Like, yeah, if somebody was selling like an AF-15 for $1, like you're kind of a jerk. You just buy it for $1, right? Like, I mean,
that was a discussion on somewhere that I was watching just recently. They said, buy the book, go and flip it, and come back and give them a chunk of money.
That's kind of what's one of the things you can do. Or the other thing I've seen,
if you start trying to explain to them, they're gonna do something stupid with the book and end up getting ripped off somewhere else. So better to buy it, give them a piece. And I mean, that was kind of the idea that the chat and the discussion came up with, was probably better off just to buy the book, say nothing, and then come back and anonymously give them some funds.
Yeah.
You know how you deal with it.
And honestly, that sounds far-fetched to some people, I'm sure, but that's actually really true. A lot of times when people do say, oh, hey, this is worth actually a lot of money here, let me give you extra money for it or whatever. Well, then that person goes in here like, wait a minute, hold on.
Oh, I want to sell it to you. Right,
there's so many stories where somebody's like, okay, so instead of me buying it, let's just say, for example, they're selling an AF-15 for $1. And then you have that conversation with them, and instead of selling it to you for $1, they sell it to somebody else for $100.
Right.
Well, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, that's a drop in the bucket. Whereas, yeah, I mean, there is kind of that idea, like you could always swing by their house a week later and say, here's an extra chunk of change. One thing that I would recommend doing in that situation is say, okay, well, you've got a box of comics here, and you know there's only one comic book you want in it, so whatever. How about, what if I just give you $1,000 for all of these comics? And they're like, oh, okay. I mean, like, you kind of shift the conversation to where you're doing something more for them in the time. Things like, again, I'm just pulling numbers out of my butt. I haven't really thought about.
I mean, I've seen people do that. Like, there's I don't know if you watch a lot of the flipping. There's like a Froggy flip.
I have seen some of his videos.
Yeah, a lot of times they'll be like, "How about 500?" And he's like, "Here's 8. Thank you." Because he knows he's getting a good deal.
Yeah, and the AF-15 is probably a bad example for my numbers that I'm using here, but whatever, right? Like ASM 300, whatever it is.
I mean, everybody. I mean, I've seen him catch heat for stuff too, though, where people feel like he's using his knowledge, but again, it's your knowledge that you're using, that you've acquired over the years, to be a tool for you, right? To know what you're looking for. So, but yeah, somebody bought a box of books in San Francisco for $25 that had an AF-15 in it.
Richard's comments killing me.
Negotiate to 50 cents. That, I think you're, I don't know. I give you 50 cents. Yeah.
You're a little high on this. It's got a missing page or something.
It's got some chipping along the side here.
Yeah. MJ says I wouldn't flip the book. I'd be keeping it as a grail book for. Yeah. By the way, if I got an AF-15, well, that's such a loaded, because it's always that thing where it's like, maybe I'd flip it and then buy a lower grade AF-15, or it depends on so much. But yeah, I just think that, like, there's a really good important. Okay, so getting back to the original comment, people ripping off grandmas, don't do that. Don't rip off the grandmas out there. At the same time, I think if you walk into a comic book store, if you walk into an antique store, and they've got something priced, to me, that's okay. Well, that's what you've got it priced at. You're a store. You came up with a number somehow. You could have looked it up. I'm assuming you should have looked it up, and that's what you put it out there for. All right, that's the price. That's just the way I look at it.
Right. But like, you'd be surprised. Like, I get people calling me up and ask me to come over and look at the books that they have. And give them an idea what they've got, right? And you'd be surprised, like, if you start explaining to people, like, okay, well, this is in that condition, so I'm going down the list here, the 1 to 10, here's about where your book falls, here's about what it's worth, I need to make some money on the deal too, so here's what I'm willing to offer. And people are pretty understanding with that kind of thought process. Now an AF-15, that's going to be totally different. But like, I had one situation where I was trying to explain that to a fella, and he, I'm like, well, and so your books are worth about 150, so I'd be willing to give you about 80, 85.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, could you do like 140? 125? And, I started looking around as I'm talking to the guy, and the guy was not in the best of health and everything. At the end, I ended up giving him 125. I was like, just give me a good word of mouth to the next person, so.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where I think if you were making a small fortune off a transaction, there's a way to do the right thing. It's going to be so situation dependent.
Depends on it. Yeah, but feel things out. Like I said, like that guy was. I started looking around, and I was like, man, this guy's not in the best of health. He's got a lot of things going on. It's not going to hurt me to give him a little extra right now, and just get these books, and I can move them for. I can at least break even on them, and he'll say something great to me about to the next person. So.
Yeah, and I think that I definitely fall more on the side of if somebody looks like they're out of their element or they need some help, I nicely, politely offer help. I offer to like, hey, do you guys need some help with figuring out where to price these, that kind of stuff. Try to be a resource for people. And for multiple reasons, there's ways in which that is just the right thing to do. It keeps people feeling like there's a positive image about comic book collectors instead of a negative one. Mm-hmm. And frankly, it can benefit you too. Like, because that person will remember you down the road. Like, oh, you know what? I have these other comic books. Maybe I should talk to that guy, like.
Come home from work and had a phone call waiting for me. Hey, I've got these comic books that my grandmother had. Can you come take a look? So-and-so who knew so-and-so referred me to you. Okay. Yeah. I don't have like signs or anything out. I don't have anything on the internet advertising that I'm buying comics. It's just like word of mouth, right? So
100%. And it is just one of those things where I think it is, Comic Journey had a comment in here earlier that is very true. I guess probably scroll up and find it. A lot of the negativity has to do with a lot of bad sellers giving the rest a bad reputation. And that's kind of the inverse of what I'm talking about. And when I say things like, be the change in the world you want to see, it's a cliche, but try to behave professionally out there is my best advice for people.
How would you want somebody to be treating your grandmother? Right.
Exactly. So we do need to talk about, there's two other types that I want to talk about. I'm not sure which one to talk about first. I want to talk about readers and I want to talk about content creators. Let's talk about readers.
Let's talk about readers.
So there's lots of ways that I can think about negativity when it comes to reading comic books. Why am I separating this out? I guess I should explain that first. Collecting and reading, it's the same thing, right? And I've kind of explained it a little bit before. I don't think there's a lot of overlap between those people, but they're kind of different, right? Like there's people that collect comic books without ever reading them, or they read them 30 years ago and they're just trying to get like a copy for their nostalgia or for their collecting or whatever. And then there's people that are, they're talking about reading the actual comic books. We're talking about following the stories, following creators, following characters, following story arcs. And that could be a collector who's going back and reading those comic books. Sure. That's why I mean there's a lot of overlap here. But when it comes down to the negativity around reading, this could be the most negative aspect in a lot of ways. And it's whether people have problems with the storyline in comic books or whether or not people have their fandom getting attacked or having negativity in their fandom. I think we can all think of fandoms that have a lot of toxicity in them without actually talking about any of the specifics, any of those things. I think we can kind of probably conjure that to mind. And the reasons why and all that kind of stuff. I'm not interested in those details, like the little tiny details of, the terms that people use and all those kinds of things. But I am interested in how you navigate that as a reader. My first thing I'm most curious about is I want to actually ask Bigby here. Bigby's a guy who's been around reading comic books for a long time. He's been around a lot of readers as a retailer, owning LCSs. What do you think about when you think about the negativity that readers either experience or the negativity that readers put out into comic books? Like, what do you think about when you think about this topic?
Well, it's hard to say because readers feel like they've earned their place in being able to say something because they put the time in to read those books, those stories. They've been with those characters for years and years.
Yeah.
So they have the right to chime off and say like, hey, what's going on right now isn't great, or I don't enjoy the way the turn this is taken. And yeah, like you said, there's definitely some groups that are more toxic than others to be a part of or to try to break into and become a part of, and not welcoming to new people.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say that them having an opinion is wrong.
Right.
I mean, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know. What are your thoughts on the subject? I can
well
play off of you.
For me, I just kind of have there's a large segment of, this is kind of one of those things where it's like signal to noise ratio, where you have people that are the vocal minority who are getting all the attention in a lot of cases. I'm part of a group as kind of a outside member for the most part that Big Me got me invited into, called the Council of X. And basically a group of comic book collectors that focus on talking about X-Men stuff. And one of the things that I love about that is you can tell there's genuine passion. And I don't mean that like in the passionate arguments, but there's genuine passion about like love for characters and for the team and for mutants and all that kind of stuff. And I love seeing that. I love seeing that is a group that's really out there talking about their love for X-Men, and I love being part of it. A lot of it's about the current stuff going on in the X-Men, and I'm a little behind. Okay, trying to get caught up with chat here. I don't know exactly what's going on, but I feel like I missed something.
Somebody's picture. He's no shirt.
Oh, okay. Everything's so the profile pics on my screen are so small right now. I can't really tell. So it is one of those things where it's great to see, but for every like I said, it's the vocal minority that's getting all the attention. For all the people out there that are talking about that, there's people out there chirping and saying like, oh, I don't like this about the X-Men, and some of those complaints are totally legitimate, totally fine. And some of them go beyond like the realm of just like not liking the story and having problems with it. They can go into the realm of feeling like people are entitled to have their opinion mean more because they've been a fan for so long or whatever. Not recognizing that they're talking to people who love the story and they've been a fan just as long as they have sometimes. Right. So it's that kind of negativity. Yes. Thank you for commenting on that, Richard. Is Colossus Collector the originator of the group?
Yes, he is.
Oh, okay. I didn't know.
He has yes, his show is Council of X. He does that every couple weeks.
So. Nice. I know I'm pretty much never able to make them, so I definitely want to try.
Brotherhood of Evil Mutants draft coming up.
Ooh, very cool. Very cool. So it is one of those things where it's tough, I think, on those readers. And I don't know that I have like perfect advice to give on like how to be positive about that. But I think that the best way you can be positive is to keep talking about what you love. To keep, don't let people who are hating on something get you down. Don't try to fighting that negativity with negativity is a great way to watch the whole world that you love burn down in flames. In my opinion, that's just my perspective.
Yeah, I think like we've talked about that in the group. Like we'll talk about like our favorite lineups and time periods for X-Men and stuff. And it's like, might not be really grooving with what's going on right now, but this was when it was really, really good for me, and just talking positively about that, and let's face it, we're not all spring chickens, right? So a lot of these younger people who are writing and stuff might not be writing to our demographic, and we might not, we might not enjoy exactly, we were the young hip people back then that really enjoyed it when it was the way we liked it. and now it's maybe moving to something. And I call myself a retro collector. I collect stuff that's older stuff because it's what I enjoy. There are newer stories that I enjoy that I get a part of, that I can, bring that knowledge base into and enjoy those newer storylines. But, I think that might be a part of it too.
Well, it's something I've talked about. People that remember the older format of this time slot show was Devil's Advocates, where my old co-host was Kyle. And Kyle, one of the things he mentioned, I completely agree with him. It's not universally true, but for a lot of people, they kind of lock in to a certain era of like music they love or movies they loved. Mm-hmm. And it's true with all media. Again, it's a generality. There's lots of people that stay current and they stay fluid and they keep up with everything, and their tastes constantly change, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying in general, that tends to be a trend. And it's very true with comic books too. If you grew up in the 80s and 90s reading comic books and those are the comic books you love, great. If you grew up in the 60s and 70s and those are the comic books you love, great. There's a really strong tendency to lock into that type of storytelling. And I've said for a long time, I think it would be really cool to see, especially when it comes to Marvel and DC, because they're the people that have been around the longest during those times, but other companies could do this too. I think it'd be cool to see companies go back and try to revisit the editorial and feel of different time periods that were popular with, like, kind of like you have the Ultimate X-Men or the Ultimate, Avengers, the Ultimate Spider-Man line. Take a new pocket universe or a new set of creators or old set of creators and put them in that playground and say, like, we're telling stories from the 70s era of X-Men, or we're telling classic JLA stories or whatever. I think that'd be fun.
I think it'd be great if they did like stories from the 70s or the 80s MCU, and you could even bring in like a lot of the creative teams and stuff that are still around, and editorial people that are still around, and writers and everything. A lot of people who may not be in vogue right now, but who were great at their craft, and could do a wonderful job bringing that feel and that nostalgia back.
Well, and there's artists, and for example, I know a lot of artists that would have been big back then are not able to do that kind of art these days, but there's a lot of artists that love doing like retro style art, or they love trying to copy old artist styles. Great. Have fun. That's not the only solution to that by any stretch of the imagination. It's just something I think about from time to time. But it's also okay just to go back and reread those old stories. Right. It's okay to do that.
Retro collector, that's me.
Yeah, 100%. And I hate to say it, but I find myself like I still read a lot of new stuff. I've said this a lot of times. I have a Marvel Unlimited subscription. I'm mostly a Marvel guy and indies. So I read a lot of stuff on Marvel Unlimited as it comes out, especially a lot of the X titles. Like I've read literally every Krakoan era title that was out there. There's a lot of them.
I enjoyed that stuff.
Yeah, I enjoyed it too. But it's not forming the same attachment for me personally. So I can kind of relate to that, right? Like it's cool. It's just not the same for me as when I was reading, but probably nothing would be, because I'm not 12 years old. I'm not 10 years old reading this stuff like I was then. It's not forming core memories and mental pathways like it was for me when I was 10 or 11 or 12. That's totally fine. That's totally fine.
My issue with reading the Krakoan era stuff is I'm so used to like Claremont's pacing and writing and stuff. I'm like, this is way too rushed. You guys have so much good stuff here, but you're missing a lot of the meat and potatoes in between. You're just like blasting through this thing so fast. So, but
yep. A couple of great comments came through here. So you'd like to go back when superheroes were superheroes again and didn't just sit around drinking coffee and acting like villains. Look, I actually enjoy both, to be honest with you. I enjoy a lot of indie comic books. I enjoy have that kind of sitting around drinking coffee feel to them. They really do. It's interesting though, because I do prefer my, the certain hero books that I read, the Kate books, to follow that kind of trend that I remember. And that's just my own personal preference. It doesn't mean anything one way or the other. But I think there's an opportunity to serve both audiences. And that's kind of where I kind of,
I love that icon. That icon's beautiful.
Yeah. Very, very much so. I think I believe Jay is an artist. I think that might. I'm so sorry if I'm wrong and I'm off base about that, Jay, but I think that's true. I believe I've seen Jay in K-Pop's Discord server. Shout out to her for her server. Pop Sequentialism says, "I'd even be down to see today's artists do their own takes on old good scripts." 100%. I think is it John Byrne that's been doing like his take on what would have happened if he kept going on X-Men? Am I totally misremembering that? I feel like that's something.
I haven't recently. I haven't seen.
I want to say he was doing something like that, but maybe I'm wrong.
He did some stuff back in the day. He did a series called X-Men: The Hidden Years, which is like maybe would have been like what would have happened if he had kept going.
Okay, Leonard says John Byrne is doing it. Yeah, I have the details wrong, I'm sure, but it's I want to say he's continuing.
Doing like a text thing, or is he drawing it? Like, I mean, he's not doing it for Marvel.
It's okay. Yeah, well, a couple people here know more about it than even I do. So, if you want to educate us, please let us know.
Yeah,
I'm curious about that.
Byrne is one of my favorite artists. One of the foundational guys of my inspiration for me doing art. So.
Ash and 8 says, "A sub to you too, bro, and join the convo." So that's cool. Yeah, definitely. And by one more chance to point that out, definitely go sub up to Big B McFly over on his channel. And then we're streaming on the EXP's YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and probably Instagram Live. Jake, let me know if I'm wrong in any of those details. Yeah, you don't need to. If you want to, great. But definitely go follow up on those. I think those are great channels to continue following. Big B, if you want to check out things like acquiring FF #1, and EXP, if you want to check out things like an interview with Scott Snyder on October 8th. Speaking of X-Men and new audience, Bo DeMaio tweeted that Disney told him he couldn't make Magneto and Professor X gay for each other and couldn't show Magneto naked while captured by Batman. Would you still be singing X-Men 97's praises if he did those things? I don't remember him saying those things, but I'll take your word for it. I mean, if the story was good, sure. But yeah,
I mean, it's kind of funny. A lot of memes and stuff have been made implying that. I mean, but
yeah, I honestly, like, I remember when Magneto was captured by Bastion. I know he was basically wearing a Speedo.
Magneto in the Speedo.
Yeah. So I mean, pretty close to it there. But yeah,
Elsewin. Okay,
Elsewhere.
Cool.
Okay. Elsewin. Thank you for the correction on that. Elsewin. Yeah. Okay. Cool. It's something I'd definitely be curious in checking out. No, I mean, it's one of those things where I think, to answer your question very honestly, run me through, some of it might have felt out of tone for what X-Men, the animated series, was and its continuation. So it might have been a little jarring. But I definitely don't have a problem with seeing representation of that with other characters. The big problem I have with that is we see Magneto talking about his wife. We see Professor X talking about Lilandra, and unless they were now bi, it doesn't really add up to me that those characters would take that direction. But I mean, it's definitely possible. A good story could be told there. And yeah, as long as it's good, I don't have a problem with it. So that is kind of a wrap up on our seller conversation.
Reader conversation.
Yes. Reader conversation. The last thing I want to talk about, Dragnito and Professor XXX. The last thing I want to talk about is pretty near and dear here, and I'll talk about it by telling a bit of a story. So get your hot cocoa and settle up for story time with Bronze. So when it comes to negativity in being a content creator, and some people might be like, I'm going to check out to this because I'm not a content creator. I think you might still find it interesting. Viewers and subscribers of my channel will have noticed that I did not produce much content in 2024. I have produced some content, but not very much. A huge part of why is because of mental health and because of stuff I've been dealing with when it comes to negativity and how I feel about content creation. Stuff that I'm trying to work through, but I'm still dealing with it. it's been difficult for me to produce the content that I want to produce. And there's several reasons why. And there's probably one or two reasons that I still haven't figured out. It's something I keep assuring myself that I'm going to get back into, and things keep coming up. And sure, they're coming up for real, but also I could probably find ways to overcome them. So to content creators out there in the comic book space, I see a lot of problems that I see with like collectors and sellers and readers on all. So I think these are all connected. But one of the things I see is new content creators or smaller channel content creators. And I say that as somebody who doesn't even have 5,000 subscribers. I'm not a big YouTube channel. I'm not a big content creator. But I see people who are still, starting that journey or sooner along in that journey, criticize themselves, compare themselves to larger channels, get frustrated with their growth, and get angry about it, get negative about it. And they lash out at themselves in some cases. It's something I really see a lot of. And I've for sure compared myself to larger channels at points and been like, because they're able to do things that I want to be able to do, interview creators that I want to be able to interview, stuff like that. But there's also channels out there that make that happen, even though they're not that big. And you really have to kind of stop doing that, in my opinion. That's something that I really recommend not getting into that. I recommend creating good content for your own standards. Create the content that you think you'd want to watch if you were watching your channel. That's the best advice I can give you. And if you need to be real with yourself and creating content for YouTube isn't for you, then don't do it, because it's going to cause a lot of stress and a lot of negativity that you might feel in that space. Maybe you create different types of content. Maybe that's what you do instead. Maybe you change, like instead of being about comic book collecting or comic book showing off your hauls or something like that, maybe instead you talk about comic books you loved and storylines you loved, or maybe you talk about history of content creators or something like that, right? I mean, like comic book creators when I say that, or I guess you could talk about the history of content creators too. I think there's different ways that you can approach it to be healthier, be more positive. But the instant you start feeling negativity about your content creation, I think you're kind of dipping into a dangerous well there. I'll tell you that I've dealt with a lot of imposter syndrome. That's been a real problem that I've had and had to deal with. Besides the comparison to other channels, totally something I've done before and something I'm trying to move away from. But it is something that I think that a lot of people, especially like when things like the comic book community awards come up, I see like this negativity, this lashing, like, how come I wasn't nominated? How come I wasn't part of that? I see it every year. And it comes up in a real way for collectors and for content creators in our space, in our niche. And I see a lot of attacking of like bigger channels and that kind of stuff. It's kind of like the advice I'd give to the readers, where it's like, that is your vocal minority. And if you stay positive and you stay, even if it's not positive, even if it's just staying neutral, keep working, keep, repetition, keep creating content, direct the content that you be what you want to see on YouTube. Mm-hmm. Pretend like you're the audience that you're making your videos for. Mm-hmm. That's what I'd recommend. It's tough, but I say this because I deal with a lot of conversations I've had one-off with people that deal with mental health. And I say, this is actually kind of to be serious for a second. It is a real problem for a lot of content creators out there. And I know it's a problem for a lot of comic book collectors and fans in general that deal with mental health problems, but especially among the content creation group. Maybe it's just because they're more vocal, or because they've reached out to me more, or whatever it is. I see this as a legitimate problem where there's people that are in this space that I've kind of worried about at times, and I've had to kind of keep my eye on, or reach out to, or, try to meet up with them at shows and try to show them, like, you're not alone. There's other people out here, that kind of stuff. It's something I take pretty seriously. So that's kind of my thoughts on that. I'm super curious to hear your thoughts on this, Big B, if you want to kind of jump in.
Well, I mean, you and I both have had like kind of a very similar road as far as like going through some mental health stuff and everything. And like I trailed off on content for a good chunk of 2024. Heading into it was very full steam ahead. Had some things happen where I just took the legs out from under me, and I just felt very dejected about things. And this is where I would say it's good to surround yourself with people that care about you and that are going to back you up and talk to you and check up on you and see how you're doing, and people that are a good influence on you creating and encouraging you to take the time you need to get right with you. I mean, so that's really important. And like, you and I are lucky that we found each other, where we are very good for each other that way, supportive to one another and talking that way. And like, I want to shout out like Mr. Akins from What's on the Comic Rack, amazing guy, super supportive to me when I was going through a lot of stuff, checked up on me, made sure I was okay. Mon Comics, same thing. Mike from Lunch Money Comics, great people that, you know, they care. And my whole group of all my friends, I mean, Dan and all those guys, just making sure that I was, to make sure that I was okay and then everything was going well. And so, just make sure that not only are you trying to put out the kind of content that you want to see out there, but surround yourself with the people who are creating that kind of content and the kind of people that you want to be like, or that you want to be around, you know, that are going to be supportive to you and helping you in that in times of need. So thanks, Ron. Thanks for being there, man.
No, I mean, it's definitely feelings mutual kind of thing, man. Like, we couldn't do it without each other. It's such a huge part of, you know, we've said it before for people that may not know, it's a huge part of why this show exists. And this topic was kind of going to the core of why we started this show. It's not all going to be about mental health or anything like that. That's not the point, but it was kind of the lens we wanted to look at things through. And, you know, kind of like what Jay Ryan is saying here. Do you think that should be your burden, though? You can only do so much for others. Secure your mask first type of thing. 100% you should secure your mask first. Big time. But I will tell you, an interesting thing happens. If you help others, a lot of times it can make you feel good too. It can help secure that mask for yourself. And that's not the only reason you should do it, but it is definitely a side effect. I wanted to take a second to point out Chris is coming here. He tries to be a net positive, but who knows? Absolutely 100% somebody who I think of when I think of their content as being overly positive, overly, if you know, some of the retrospectives on some of the creators, neutral maybe in some cases, but overly positive. Like it gets people, I guarantee it gets people reading comics by some of those creators you talk about and some of the history, and some of the interviews you do. It gets people reading those comic books, and I guarantee you that generates a lot of positivity. Chris did a 7-hour stream the other day where he talked a bit about people doing their own comic books. And help to advertise those comic books, essentially, like, hey, come on and tell me about your comic book, you know, your Kickstarter or whatever's going on.
Wow, I need to check that out.
That is super positive, right? That's
I love his Marvel Method video. I just watched that recently. That was great.
I love that video. Now he is confused because this is not the Teen Wolf podcast. It's a common mistake. We got kind of the before and the after. It's just kind of, it gets confusing for people. I don't know, the whole Sticky Goose thing. If you want, I recommend checking out the Comic Tom interview that Sticky Goose just did. I did talk about that on Beyond Wednesdays over on Brian's channel recently. That stream was Saturday if you want to check out some of that. But too, but yeah, that whole thing, to look at it through a positive lens. Hopefully it's comedic in nature, and that's great. If you don't like that kind of content, stay away from it. If you like it, enjoy it. That's really
a positive lens that I would look at that through. Is it really like to me, like right when he first came out with his thing about the whole sticker people thing and everything, I had just made stickers for my channel and made a shirt to go to a show so people could, yep, that's the sticker. And but it kind of unified everyone as like, yeah, we are sticker people. We do like each other, and we are proud of our channels, and we do enjoy, making content for other people. And there's nothing wrong with that. You should take pride in what you're doing and what you're making. And I don't think there's anything to be ashamed of. And I try to steer away from that kind of controversy and everything. I mean, I know that there's the whole, what they call the sticky goose effect. If you talk about him, you're going to get a bump in your viewership, but it's not worth it for the bump, I don't think, to get embroiled in that kind of thought process. So
that I agree with you. That said, for people that there's a large portion of this community that loves drama, that loves, and I think there's something I noticed a long time ago. There's a huge overlap between wrestling fans and comic book fans. What do those two things have in common? Dramatic storylines. And people love, as like a meta version of that, people love dramatic storylines in the comic book community. I one of the weirdest, most surreal moments of my YouTube career, huge channel, Comics Explained, dropped into one of my live chats because I was talking about something controversial and was literally like, I saw Comics Explained. I was like, wait a minute, is Comics Explained really in my live chat? And yeah, he was. And I was like, are you lost or what are you doing in here? He's like, no, I love this stuff. I'm just curious about the drama.
Right.
He's like, I'm trying to learn what's going on.
Not wrong. People do enjoy that. I'm just saying that for my part of it,
But I guess my only point is, if you do love it, great. I don't have a problem with that. The only problem I would have with it is if you're trying to take somebody else down by doing it. That's where it gets weird to me, and that's just me personally. People have their own opinions on it.
Right.
So, and I think that it does have a tendency to, for anybody involved with that kind of stuff, I do think it has a tendency to create more of a negative space for themselves than they realize in the moment. Ignore the negative comments on your channel, unless they're being not mean, but unless they're being critical. And I mean critical as in hopefully constructive criticism, but maybe, oh, I can't hear you, your audio sucks, that kind of stuff. Sure, they can say it nicer, but take that into account and just say, okay, maybe here's a check mark on, maybe I should work on my microphone or my audio or whatever it is. Try to take it that way. It's the way I would look at it.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, yeah, it's just not my cup of tea. I mean, but
right.
I've had people that are friends of mine who asked my opinion on whether they're like, well, I could try to be more controversial. What do you think? And I'm like, you have a fan base that have become subscribers of your channel because they love the way that you do what you do. And if you try to change what you're doing to try to become a part of that, you're going to lose that fan base, and the new subscribers that you get aren't going to be there for the normal content that you put out. So what are you going after? Do you want people who enjoy the real you and what you're trying to, like you were saying, make content for like you would like to see out there, or just trying to chase subs for drama? It's just like,
well, so here, okay. here's my real thought on it. Like, let's kind of unpack it one level further. The fallacy that people fall into, and I'll explain the trap real fast, is like what Big B's saying is people that think that, oh, this, the sticky goosebump, what you refer to it as.
I got my spiel from you actually when we were talking. So I'm sorry, I kind of.
Oh, no, that's fine. But it's people see that and they go, oh, they're getting views. This is how I get views. This is how I get subs. Folks, you're falling into a trap, because we are a infinitesimally tiny niche on YouTube. What does that mean? That's a term in content creation. We are such a small people don't hop. You want to know what the algorithm is and how to get tons of views. What do people go onto YouTube search engine and type every day? How to something, how to do that, how to fix this part on my car, how to take care of this with my pet, how to teach this to my kid. People search for that kind of stuff. That's the big, huge content on YouTube. How to what comic books are coming out this week is not something most people are going to type in. Some people do. Show me your comic book haul is not something most people are going to type in. Some people do. And so that's why if you wonder why are you getting 20, 30 views on your video, sometimes it's usually stuff like that. The thumbnail and the title can help, but they have to be genuine to the content you're putting out there. If this drama stuff, there's a baseline of viewers that are going to watch all this comic book content that, the comic book collecting content on YouTube, like talking about hauls and top 10 lists and, I walked into a comic shop and this happened to me. There's a baseline number of viewers that are going to talk about that kind of stuff and watch it. And, I'm going to click on this video because the thumbnail looks at Sticky Goose versus Comic Tom or whatever it is, right? They're going to look at that more because that's more interesting than what you normally would see. Beef and drama on YouTube is not a new thing. And the comic book YouTube scene is kind of slowly starting to discover it. And that's why you're seeing this bump. Well, guess what? The people who get millions of views and talk about comic books on YouTube aren't talking about that stuff. They're talking about the history of the X-Men. They're talking about, the legendary Stan Lee, the legendary Jack Kirby, the history of Batman. What is Kryptonite? They're talking about the history and the reality of comic books because people will search for those things on YouTube. Mm-hmm. If you really want views, stop chasing the drama crap and start making content that serves the greater audience on YouTube. The more practice you put into that, the better you do. If that's all you care about, focus your efforts and energy there. That'd be my advice. That's really what it comes down to.
Like the great storylines that are akin to you, that are part of what makes you, what inspires you to be into comics. Make some content about that and talk with passion about that. I mean, Comic Tropes is a great example of that. I mean, he does amazing content about great artists and history of comics, and do stuff like that.
Speaking along those lines, I think he's a fantastic creator. He actually has a really good point here. I feel like it can actually also be negative to only do positive reviews. It feels inauthentic, but I try to focus on what I love and hopefully spread that interest. You're right. You need to be authentic as well. I mean, you're 100% right, Chris. Probably made a bit of a generalization there when it comes to that. But that's a really fantastic point. What is kryptonite? I keep hearing about it. I guarantee it's going to be crazy. One of you guys are going to make a what is kryptonite video, and you're going to get more views than I've ever had in my entire life, and more power to you if you do it. I'm the kind I searched
interesting video.
Yeah, I searched about the different lantern cores because my daughter, who's 6 years old now, was super curious about the different lantern cores and what their different oaths were and all that stuff. So guess where we ended up? We ended up on a little channel called Variant Comics with millions of subscribers that I've watched for years. And they're a great channel, awesome channel. Learning about all the different lantern cores, and she was super thrilled and entertained. Guess what didn't come up? Any of my videos. So if you want to do that, then there you go.
I think what Comic Tropes was saying that is really important to somebody that I'm friends with made a video. He talked about toxic positivity, where he's saying that basically like the inability to talk about anything negative, which we don't steer clear of the things that are negative on this channel. We'll talk about them. We try to put a positive spin on them. but he's saying like, just, you know, he made an example of like the family that's eating dinner and nobody wants to bring up the fact that the teenage daughter is drunk at the table, and because they don't want to ruin the meal, right? So they don't make a scene to be the bad guy. But at some point somebody's got to take her keys away, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, we don't steer clear of that. We try to do the positivity thing. So I don't know if there's such a thing as the toxic positivity, but he was trying to say that that's a problem right now in YouTube, is that nobody wants to talk about the negative.
Thanks for the bring up on that, Jay. Yeah, it is true. You know, you need to be authentic. And I think at times, you know, look, I hate and I love in some ways that if you look at my most popular videos on my channel, almost all of them deal with a negative topic. People being ripped off, people being scammed, me potentially being scammed on a couple things. But in those videos, I've not been perfect at it. I've not been super successful at it, like in a complete way. I have tried to, at the very least, you know, educate people, present the facts as clearly and best as I can. Point out the devil's advocate approach, which is why it's a big part of the reason why that old show is called Devil's Advocates, because that's something I do all the time. I'm a devil's advocate. I like to look at things from the other side. So if I'm talking about something and I say, you know, this happened and it's really negative, I might say, oh, but actually one good thing that came out of it, or one good thing they did, you know, I try to point it out, because if you make a video and it's all the negative stuff, you're not presenting the whole picture. If you do a comic review and you don't really like the inking on it, and you don't mention that, you're not really presenting the whole story. For example, you could love the comic book and just wish the inking was better. That's okay. It's constructive criticism. How you say it is what matters, right? So.
Yeah. No, I totally agree.
Pop sequentialism is pointing out some deep lore. Wow, yeah, that's some deep lore. It would have been really fun to have Nerdy Girl on and do that interview. But hey, you know, if you want, go check out Keep It Thorough. Ended up doing the interview with Nerdy Girl. That almost was with Matt and I doing that with Nerdy Girl. That would have been fun. It would have been interesting. I think it would have been revealing in a good way. Comic tropes is almost, and this is great. Let's kind of palate cleanse a little bit. It's almost October. If money was no object, what would everyone cosplay as? Ooh, there's a great one. I love this question, and I think we will kind of probably ride out after this one. But what about you, Big B? Who would you? I mean, now I'm gonna assume it's the Thing, probably. You'd like hold up your Fantastic Four #1 and be like, "I'm the Thing. It's clobbering time," and beat up your Fantastic Four #1.
You gotta be like, you gotta be faithful to your body type, right? So I'd probably try to go like as the badass Santa Claus from what's that movie?
Violent Night?
No, there you go. But no, the one with the Jack Frost, and they were all kind of like superheroes, but he had the tattoos, naughty and nice, on each arm. And
I don't think I know this one. I'm now super curious.
They're almost like, but yeah, Jack Frost turns out everybody thinks he's a kind of a fly by night, kind of just he never takes anything seriously, and it turns out he's like this tragic character. It's a great movie.
Ooh, that's cool.
Rise of the Guardians, maybe, is that the name of the movie?
Oh,
yeah. So anyway, yeah, it could be like a badass Santa Claus.
Nice.
Like the Santa Claus for Fortnite.
I think I thought it would be really cool to do Hellboy.
True to your body types.
Yeah, I mean, I could pull it off. The trench coat could hide a lot. My daughter asked me if I wanted to go with Cyclops earlier, and I thought that was a real compliment. But boy, Slim and I are not adjectives that I would put in the same sentence.
Kids see us through the best light, though. Kids see us through.
Yes. That was very awesome.
We'll never be able to see ourselves through.
Yeah, I could definitely do like a casual Cyclops cosplay with just like a visor, the red glasses. Man, I really wanted those. Were they Oakley 20s or Romeos? I can't remember what they were. I really wanted the Oakleys he wore in the James Marsden that he wore in the X movies. That would have been fun. No, K-pop, you are 100% right. In for most people, for whatever reason, like I have for my own mental health, I think I have no desire to dress up as somebody who I know is fitter in much different body type than I. I know that's not a rule.
Myself.
Yeah.
What would I pass well as?
Yeah. Age must that'd be fun. That'd be fun.
Hey, you said your daughter's big into Bigfoot right now. I mean, you could go as Sasquatch.
I kept trying to tell her that I wanted her. I tried to convince her to go as Little Red Riding Hood, and I could be the big bad wolf. I thought that would be funny.
There you go.
We would like play that story or whatever when she was younger. So I thought it'd be cool. But she's going to be Hermione, so I'm probably going to end up as Hagrid. Which not my first choice, but hey, whatever. At least it'll be funny. I
can see that though. I mean, you got the beard going on and everything.
Yeah, and K-pop, again, you're bringing up great points. This is like a me personally thing that I prefer. If I'm done dressing up as the character, I want to kind of feel like, oh, I've nailed it for me, and that's kind of just a me thing.
Yeah, I didn't mean it to like shame anybody at all.
No,
I was just talking about me personally. Like, what can I pull off?
Actually, figure drawing. If we ask Frank Cho, he might have a different opinion on this because he's obsessed with Sasquatch, and I feel like he thought he had a Sasquatch encounter with me at Washington State SummerCon.
I'm looking forward to that book he's supposed to be coming out with.
I know. I'm excited. And so does Sasquatch. We can all be. I know somebody who made their own like Lego head at a party I went to back in my 20s when people took Halloween really seriously, because they wanted to get super toasted at a party. I don't know why people cared about Halloween so much, but they did. He made like his own Lego head, and it was so awesome. He did such a good job.
I figure your eyes put there. Aren't you actually a dashing Sasquatch?
That said, I do think we've had a really great conversation. Next week, we're going to endeavor to have kind of more of a normal show. And we can still talk about topics that are related to this kind of stuff. Maybe we have some follow-up based on some of the comments we get here. Who knows? Yeah. But we are going to try to just do more Heroes for Heroes items and recaps and show off what's going on for that. And we are going to try to show off like community artwork. By the way, if you have artwork and you're watching this right now, you qualify as part of our community. If you're a professional, we will not include you in the contest we're doing as we come up to the end of the year. But at the end of the year, we're going to start showing off the artwork people have sent in. We're going to kind of choose which artwork we like the most, and have a competition. And whoever wins that competition, you want to post your stuff on social media, all that kind of stuff, is going to get some original art from us and some comic books and that kind of stuff. So if you're interested in that, please send your artwork. We like it if you send in your artwork, even if you're a professional, because it shows people, all levels, like from amateurs to professionals and what you can do. We've had some great professional art and some fantastic artwork from people that watch the show. So we'd love to see it.
Unprofessionals are welcome as well.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. Fin Fing Foom. Yep. There you go. I could do the Incredible Bulk. I could do that. But yeah. So we'll be back next week with a show that we went a little long this week, but I think it was an important topic and I didn't want to cut the conversation short. Thanks everybody for being mature and awesome in the chat. I know it's a sensitive and real topic. The last thing I'll say, if anybody does out there have any kind of mental health issues, some negativity you're dealing with in your life, you can always feel free to reach out to me. Not that I'm necessarily the best resource to help you, but I'm always willing to talk to somebody if they need to talk about anything, that kind of stuff. Hit me up on Instagram or go join my Discord and DM me through Discord or whatever. Links are down below for all that stuff. Email, whatever you want to do. Reach out.
I'm open to.
Yeah.
Just hit me up on the DMs for sure.
Absolutely. So with that said, thanks everybody for being part of a great show. I had a really good time with everybody here, and we'll see you back next week, Monday, 8 o'clock for the next episode of Best Coast Comics. Have a great night, everybody.
Join the party. Head over to our link tree to find all the links for everywhere the experience is all the time.